Today we're here to talk about Coding Clinic, the often overlooked supplement to our coding guidelines and our coding rules. We're going to talk about some primarily ICD-10 coding clinics, but there are several ICD-9 coding clinics that we do need to have a look at, kind of some significant items from the very last ICD-9 coding clinic that we should have a look at. So with that said, we're going to start kind of by doing a little bit of background on Coding Clinic to get everyone on the same page. Coding Clinic, as you know, is published by the American Hospital Association. The questions are evaluated and responded to by each of the cooperating parties, the American Hospital Association, AHIMA, the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, and the National Center for Health Statistics. Each gets to look at each and every question and offer input on their unique perspective on that question. Basically, coding clinics are a means of fine-tuning and clarifying issues for our coding practice. One brand new feature of Coding Clinic, and this is a tremendous improvement to the Coding Clinic Advisor process, is something called AHA Coding Clinic Advisor. This is a means by which you can ask questions to Coding Clinic. It used to be, in the old days, you would write a letter or you would fax a question to Coding Clinic, and you might never hear back what became of that question. You would always wonder whether perhaps they had even received the question. And now the process can be done over the internet at, as you see the address, codingclinicadvisor.com. You log in, you register, you enter your question, you include any applicable backup information that you might need to, you submit it, but one of the most important features is that you get a tracking number, and you can go in from time to check the status of your question. I always encourage people that if they have a question, they should submit it through this process. I know often people think, well, my question isn't that significant, or no one else really wonders about this obscure aspect of coding, but in fact, you should make the effort. You never know. You're probably asking the same question that many people have asked, but no one has actually made the effort to fulfill this process. I want to make you aware of this, simply to make you aware of it in the hopes that you will use it down the road. The Coding Clinic transition timeline. Fall 2013, the last meeting of AHA Coding Clinic editorial board met and entertained the last questions for ICD-9 that were looked at. January 1st, 2014, as you recall, the central office was no longer accepting Coding Clinic questions, nor would respond to those providing advice on ICD-9. More recently, the first quarter of 2014, and more significantly, the very last issue of Coding Clinic for ICD-9 was published. And if you're like me, you looked at it and said, well, we only have about 8 months left of this. I took it, put it on the shelf, and said we have much more important things to do and learn about ICD-10. And of course, that was until the delay, which we'll talk about momentarily. But also significant in the first quarter of 2014 was that the first issue of Coding Clinic for ICD-10 CM was published, CM and PCS. The second quarter is also available, and because we're now in the third quarter of the year, we anxiously await on third quarter. We're about halfway through the third quarter. We haven't seen it yet. We look forward to receiving that one shortly. There are no plans to translate all of the previous issues of Coding Clinic for ICD-9 into ICD-10, CM, or PCS. But the operational word there is all, because what you will see today is that some of the more significant issues are being translated into ICD-10, items that Coding Clinic wants to make sure there is a smooth transition with respect to coding practice on certain clinical issues from 9 into 10. And we're going to look at some of those today as well. They don't want to translate all of them because many of the questions were specific to how to assign ICD-9 codes, and that just doesn't really make sense in the context of ICD-10, and that's the point that they wish to make. This stated plan has been reiterated in the first quarter 2014 Coding Clinic. There you have it. We're going to look at some of those momentarily. Second quarter Coding Clinic 2014 reminded us that the cooperating parties have reviewed the original plan. This is with respect to the delay with the implementation of I-10, and have decided, although that we're going to use ICD-9 for longer than we anticipated, that there are no plans to continue to correct and update ICD-9. So ICD-9 is off the books right now with respect to there will be no new coding clinics, there will be no new guidelines. Worth noting that there are no new codes. ICD-9 codes coming into effect. The proposed rule was issued about a month ago, 2 months ago, and the final rule was issued in draft about 3 weeks ago, and I am told will be published in the Federal Register tomorrow. You can have a look out for that. There are no new codes in ICD-9 that I mentioned, but there are some DRG changes, some tweaking to the reimbursement structure, as well as some updates to the quality issues that we always see in the Federal Register. With respect to the delay, this statement appeared on the CMS website shortly after April 1st. On April 1st, the PA, what was referred to as PAMA, the Protecting Access to Medicare Act, was enacted, saying that they could not adopt ICD-10 prior to October 1st, 2015. They required entities to use ICD-9 through September 30th, 2015, and the Department of Health and Human Services would release an interim rule that would assign a compliance date of October 1st, 2015. That final rule has been published. And in fact, that occurred in a statement July 31st, 2014. And in fact, the rule that appeared in the Federal Register the first week of August, I don't recall the precise date, is entitled CMS 0043. It's about a 24-page document that I recommend you read, talks about the new implementation date, talks about some of the reasons that it came about. But I thought what was interesting was the second statement, that this deadline allows providers, insurance companies, and others in the healthcare industry time to ramp up their operations to ensure their systems. And the phrase ramp up is a rather casual one to find on the CMS website. And while I just pointed out to you, I only pointed out because several other folks had pointed out to me that it's not the kind of language that you generally see offered by CMS or the Secretary of Health and Human Services. A bit casual, but nonetheless tells us that this is the method we will be using to prepare for ICD-10 for that implementation date. Moving along, these are the universe of ICD-10 coding clinics that we have to look at today. There are 7 of them, and in fact the first 5 contain our ICD-10 coding clinic guidance that were contained within ICD-9 coding clinics. ICD-10 coding clinics, we have 2, as I mentioned, first and second quarter 2014, which are devoted entirely to ICD-10 CM and PCS coding issues.